Exiled by the Galactic Council, humanity built an empire of its own. Part 1. The grand amphitheater of the Galactic Council hung in silent orbit around Zera 9, a swirling gas giant with rings of violet ice. Inside the dome-shaped chamber, over 200 alien species sat in tiered rows, their forms as varied as the stars they came from. Some floated in anti-grav bubbles, others perched on multi-jointed limbs, and a few communicated through pulses of colored light. At the center of it all stood the human delegation, 5 men and women in simple gray uniforms, their faces calm but their hearts pounding. For weeks, the Council had debated humanity's fate. Earth had expanded quickly after discovering faster-than-light travel. Within a century, humans had settled 12 systems, built orbital stations, and shared their culture, music, stories, even recipes, with nearby species. But not everyone welcomed their enthusiasm. The Varelians, an ancient race with skin like polished obsidian and voices like grinding stone, claimed humans were reckless. They said human terraforming damaged delicate ecosystems, that their open communication networks spread dangerous ideas, and that their drive to explore ignored galactic law. The humans argued back. They showed data proving their colonies recycled waste better than most council worlds. They played recordings of peaceful first contacts. They explained their terraforming only happened on dead planets, never on living ones. But the council had already made up its mind. Fear of the unknown had taken root, and humanity was the unknown. On the final day of judgment, silence filled the amphitheater as the High Arbiter of the Varelians rose. Her name was Kelra, and she had served on the council for over 300 years. Her voice echoed through the chamber, translated instantly into every known language. The species known as Homo sapiens has shown repeated disregard for the balance of the galaxy, she said. Their ambition outpaces their wisdom. Therefore, by unanimous vote, humanity is hereby exiled. The sentence was harsh. All human colonies beyond the Sol system were to be abandoned within 1 standard year. All starships were to be grounded or handed over to Council custody. Earth and its immediate neighbors, Mars, the Moon, the asteroid belt, would remain under constant surveillance. No human would be allowed to leave the solar system again, ever. The humans stood frozen. One of them, a young astrophysicist named Daniel Cruz, felt his stomach drop. He had spent his life studying the stars, dreaming of walking on worlds no human had seen. Now that dream was illegal. Beside him, Lisa Moran, a chief engineer from the Mars orbital shipyards, clenched her fists. She had helped build the very ships that would now be taken away. Back on Mars, news of the verdict spread like wildfire. In the domed cities of Olympus Town and Valley's Haven, people gathered in plazas watching the broadcast on public screens. Some cried, some shouted in anger. Others just stared at the red sky, wondering if they'd ever see another sunrise on a different world. But not everyone accepted the sentence quietly. Deep in a hidden facility beneath the Tharsis Bulge, a group of scientists, former military officers, and civilian volunteers had been preparing for this moment for years. They called themselves the Horizon Initiative. They knew the Council distrusted humanity's speed, its creativity, its refusal to conform. They had always suspected exile might come. Daniel and Lisa were among them. That night, they met in a secure bunker lined with old server racks and flickering holoscreens. Around a circular table sat others: Marcus Bell, a former schoolteacher who now coordinated logistics; Tina Rojas, a daring pilot with over 5,000 hours in deep space; and a dozen more, all with skills the new world would need. "They think we'll just go home and hide," Lisa said, her voice low but sharp. "They think we'll forget the stars." "We won't," Daniel replied. "And we don't have to. Project Horizon is ready. Maybe not perfect, but ready." The plan was bold. Using decommissioned freighters, retired patrol cutters, and half-built colony ships stored in the Kuiper Belt, they would evacuate as many people as possible before the Council enforcers arrived. They had food synthesizers, water recyclers, cryopods for long journeys, and enough fuel to reach the far edge of known space. Their destination was a region called the Helios Rift, a chaotic nebula full of radiation storms and gravitational anomalies. The Council avoided it. That's why it was perfect. Over the next months, the operation moved in secret. Cargo ships that were supposed to be scrapped instead carried families. Mining drones were reprogrammed to help build hidden engines. Schools on Ceres quietly closed, their students and teachers boarding shuttles under the cover of maintenance drills. On Titan, Methane farmers packed up their labs and greenhouses. No one spoke of it openly, but everyone knew. This was not surrender. This was departure. Daniel spent his days coordinating navigation routes, mapping safe paths through asteroid fields and dead zones. Lisa worked non-stop in the shipyards, welding hull plates, testing life support, and training crews who had never flown beyond Mars. Marcus organized supplies, seeds, medical kits, data archives of human history, art, and science. Tina flew scouting missions, checking for council patrols, always staying just out of sensor range. The day the first evacuation ship launched, a cold rain fell over Valle's Haven. It was synthetic rain, piped from recycled moisture, but it felt real enough. Daniel stood on a viewing platform watching the massive vessel, named the Pioneer Rise, lift off on silent ion thrusters. Inside were 3,000 people, including children who had never seen Earth. They weren't running away. They were going forward. As the weeks passed, more ships followed. The Council, busy enforcing the exile order in populated zones, didn't notice the quiet disappearances from the outer colonies. By the time they realized something was wrong, over 3 million humans had vanished into the void. On the last day before the deadline, Daniel and Lisa stood together on the bridge of the final ship, the Ares Legacy. Behind them, Mars shrank into a red dot. Ahead, only darkness and possibility. They called us chaotic, Lisa said, arms crossed, eyes on the starfield. Good, Daniel answered. Chaos builds new things. And with that, the last human ship jumped to light speed, leaving the Council's galaxy behind. They weren't lost. They were free. And somewhere out there, in the uncharted dark, a new empire would begin. Exiled by the Galactic Council, humanity built an empire of its own. Part 2. The fleet of human ships drifted through the endless dark, far beyond the reach of the Galactic Council's sensors. Over 80 vessels, freighters, colony transports, old military cutters, and even a few repurposed mining rigs, formed a loose armada carrying 3 million souls. Most of the passengers slept in cryopods, their bodies preserved for the decades-long journey ahead. Only a skeleton crew remained awake at any time, rotating in shifts to keep the ships running and the hope alive. Daniel Cruz and Lisa Moran were among the first to take watch. They floated through the narrow corridors of the Ares Legacy, checking oxygen levels, recalibrating navigation charts, and listening to the hum of the ship's core. Outside, the stars were unfamiliar. They had left behind the constellations of home and entered a part of the galaxy no human had ever seen. Life aboard the fleet was hard, but orderly. Food came from algae vats and protein synthesizers. Water was recycled endlessly. Every scrap of metal, every drop of coolant was reused. Children born during the voyage learned to walk in low gravity, their first steps guided by parents who had never known a world with open skies. Teachers like Marcus Bell held classes in cargo bays using holograms to show students what forests, oceans, and rain looked like. Tina Rojas trained new pilots in simulators built from spare parts, preparing them for the day they would need to fly in real space again. The journey was not without danger. In the third year, a solar flare from a nearby red dwarf overloaded the shields of the Pioneer Rise, knocking out its main reactor. Lisa led a repair team in vacuum suits, welding new conduits while tethered to the hull. 2 crew members were lost, their names later etched into a memorial wall aboard the Ares Legacy. In the 7th year, a cryopod malfunction caused a small outbreak of an old Earth virus. Doctors worked for weeks to contain it, using vaccines grown in biolabs no bigger than a closet. Through it all, the humans held together. They held weekly assemblies where anyone could speak, about fears, ideas, or memories of home. They celebrated birthdays with rationed sweets and sang old songs passed down from grandparents. They argued, yes, sometimes fiercely over power use or ration sizes, but they always found a way to agree, because they knew one truth. If they turned on each other, they would all die alone in the dark. Daniel spent most of his time in the observatory deck, staring at star maps and scanning for habitable systems. He had chosen their destination carefully. The Helios Rift, a turbulent region of gas clouds, rogue planets, and unstable stars. The Council avoided it because it played havoc with sensors and navigation, but Daniel saw opportunity in the chaos. If they could survive there, no one would find them. After 23 years of travel, the first signs of the rift appeared. Strange energy pulses flickered on long-range scanners. Gravity readings became erratic. Tina took a scout ship ahead, weaving through magnetic storms and debris fields. She returned with good news. Deep inside the rift, there was a cluster of stable stars, each with planets that showed signs of water, nitrogen, and solid ground. The fleet adjusted course. As they neared the system, excitement spread through the ships. People who had spent their whole lives in metal corridors pressed their faces to viewports, watching as a yellow-white star grew brighter ahead. Daniel named it New Sol. Its third planet, rocky blue and wrapped in thin white clouds, became their first target. They called it Aurora. Landing was tense. The atmosphere was breathable but thin. The gravity was 92% of Earth's. Winds howled across plains of black rock, but rivers cut through valleys, and patches of hardy moss clung to canyon walls. It was not paradise, but it was alive, and it was theirs. The first landing party included Daniel, Lisa, Marcus, and Tina. They stepped onto the surface in reinforced suits, boots sinking slightly into fine gray soil. Marcus knelt and scooped a handful, letting it sift through his fingers. "It's real," he whispered. Tina laughed, a sound that hadn't been heard on a planet in over 2 decades within weeks. The first base rose from the ground, modular domes linked by pressurized tunnels. Solar arrays spread across the highlands, and water pumps drawing from underground aquifers. Cryopods were opened in waves, families reuniting after years of frozen sleep. Children ran through the domes, their voices echoing in spaces built for silence. But building a world took more than hope. Crops failed at first. The native soil lacked key nutrients. Lisa and her engineers designed hydroponic farms inside repurposed cargo containers. Energy was scarce during Aurora's long nights, so they built geothermal taps deep into the planet's crust. Communication between settlements was slow, until Tina's team launched a network of relay satellites made from spare ship parts. Leadership shifted as the population grew. Daniel focused on science and long-term planning. Lisa oversaw infrastructure and ship maintenance, because they knew they might need to move again. Marcus became the voice of the people, mediating disputes and organizing work crews. Tina led exploration missions to nearby planets, mapping resources and checking for threats. They found more worlds. One had vast oceans perfect for floating cities. Another held rich veins of rare metals beneath its icy crust. A small moon orbiting a gas giant became a shipyard where humans began building new vessels. Not for war, but for expansion. They did not forget the council. Sometimes, late at night, Daniel would look up at the stars and wonder if Earth still watched. But they did not build weapons. They built schools, hospitals, and libraries. They recorded every discovery, every mistake, every song sung in the mess hall. They wanted their new home to be better than the old one, not just in technology, but in spirit. Years turned into decades. The original crew aged. Children became adults. Grandchildren were born who had never known exile, only freedom. They called themselves the Alliance, not out of pride, but out of necessity. They were bound together by choice, not by law. And deep in the Helios rift, hidden by storms and silence, humanity began to thrive. They were no longer the species the Council feared. They were something new, something patient, something ready. The stars outside their windows were no longer distant dreams. They were neighbors. And one day they would meet them, not as outcasts but as equals. Exiled by the Galactic Council, humanity built an empire of its own. Part 3. 73 years after the silent exodus, the human enclave in the Helios Rift was no longer a collection of desperate refugees. It had become a thriving civilization spread across 5-star systems, all linked by stable jump corridors mapped by Tina Rojas and her descendants. The world they called Aurora was now home to over 2 million people. Its cities built into canyon walls and floating above shallow seas. But Aurora was just the beginning. On the ocean world of Meridia, vast platforms held farms that grew food under artificial suns. Beneath the waves, researchers studied native life forms that glowed with soft blue light and communicated through sound pulses. On the iron-rich planet of Kale, miners dug deep tunnels where geothermal energy powered entire towns. In orbit around a quiet red dwarf, the shipyard known as Forge Station never slept, its cranes assembling new vessels with hulls woven from asteroid metal and self-healing polymers. At the heart of it all was New Sol Command, a ring-shaped station built around the original Ares legacy, now preserved as a museum. Here, decisions were made not by a single ruler, but by a council of citizens chosen every 5 years. Daniel Cruz, now in his late 90s but still sharp-eyed, served as senior advisor. Lisa Moran, Her hair white but her hands steady, led the engineering guild. Marcus Bell had passed away peacefully 20 years earlier, but his teachings lived on in schools that emphasized empathy alongside science. Tina Rojas, retired from flying but still sharp as ever, trained young scouts in the art of silent navigation. Humanity's greatest breakthrough came not from weapons, but from creation. Scientists on Aurora developed bio-integrated starships, vessels grown from modified coral-like organisms that could repair themselves, breathe in vacuum, and respond to pilot thoughts through neural links. These ships, called symbionts, used no fuel. They fed on cosmic radiation and stardust. They were quiet, fast, and nearly invisible to old-style sensors. Another leap came in energy. Using knowledge from Earth's lost archives and new discoveries in the rift's magnetic fields, engineers built zero-point reactors that drew power from the fabric of space itself. Cities no longer feared blackouts. Farms ran day and night. Even the smallest outpost had clean water and warm light. But what truly set the Alliance apart was how it lived. There were no armies. Only defense volunteers trained in rescue and protection. There was no money. Resources were shared based on need and contribution. Every child learned to fix a water purifier, grow food, and read the stars. Art was as valued as engineering. Music filled public spaces, and stories of the Exodus were told not as tragedy, but as a beginning. Still, they remained hidden. Scout ships never traveled beyond the outer edge of the rift. All signals were tightly encrypted or sent through quantum relays that left no trace. They knew the Council might still be watching. They did not want war. They wanted peace to grow. Then came the day everything changed. It started with a faint signal, a distress call, weak and broken, picked up by a listening post near the rift's eastern rim. The language was not human. It was Varelian, the same species that had led the vote to exile humanity. At first, many wanted to ignore it. "Let them suffer," said one council member. "They cast us out. Why help them now?" But Daniel disagreed. "We are not them," he said. "If we turn away someone in need, we become what they feared we were." After debate, the council agreed to investigate. Tina's granddaughter, Elena Rojas, piloted a small symbiont ship toward the source. What she found shocked her. A Varelian patrol vessel, badly damaged, drifted near a dead moon. Its hull was scorched, its engines dark. Clinging to its side were escape pods, some cracked open by debris. Elena docked carefully. Inside the main ship, she found 6 survivors, 4 Varelians and 2 members of a smaller species called the Myran. They were dehydrated, injured, and terrified. Their ship had been ambushed by Cathar raiders, brutal mercenaries known for burning entire colonies for sport. The Council had sent them on a routine patrol, but the Cathar had grown bolder, striking deeper into Council space. The humans brought the survivors back to Aurora. Doctors treated their wounds. Translators helped them speak. At first, the Varelians were suspicious, expecting cages or questions. Instead, they were given clean rooms, warm food, and privacy. One of them, a young officer named Ziren, asked Elena why they were being helped. "Because you needed it," she replied simply. Ziren was silent for a long time. Then he said, "The Council said you were wild, that you would destroy anything you touched." Elena smiled. "We build more than we break." Word of the rescue spread quickly among the survivors. The Mirren, small and gentle-eyed, wept with gratitude. The Varelians remained guarded, but even they began to soften. They saw children playing in gardens grown from recycled ship parts. They saw humans arguing over poetry in public forums. They saw a society that worked not because it was forced to, but because it chose to. Daniel met with Ziren in a quiet garden on New Sol command. "You must wonder why we live like this," Daniel said. "I do," Ziren admitted. "Your records show you once fought wars, polluted worlds, divided yourselves." "We did," Daniel said. "But exile taught us something. When you have nothing but each other, you learn to care for each other." Ziren looked at the stars through the dome above. "The Council is not what it once was. Fear rules it now. The Varelians. We are afraid of change." "Change is life," Daniel said. Before the survivors left, the Alliance gave them a new ship. Small, fast, and powered by a zero-point core. They also gave them data, maps of safe routes, medical knowledge, even seeds that could grow in poor soil. "Share this if you can," Lisa told them. "Or keep it. The choice is yours." As the Varelian ship jumped away, the humans knew their secret would not last. Someone would talk, Someone would wonder how outcasts built such wonders, and soon the council would come, not with words but with warships. But this time humanity was ready. Not with anger but with strength. Not to conquer but to stand. They had built an empire not of steel and fire but of hope and hands joined together, and no council, no matter how old or powerful, could erase that. In the quiet of the Helios Rift the stars watched, and for the first time in centuries, humanity did not hide from them. Exiled by the Galactic Council, humanity built an empire of its own. 4 weeks passed after the Varelian survivors left the Helios Rift. Life in the Alliance continued as usual. Children went to school, engineers repaired aging systems, and farmers harvested crops under artificial suns. But a quiet tension hung in the air. Everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the Council learned the truth. Humans were not gone. They were not broken. They had grown. The first sign came from the outer listening posts. Faint energy signatures, too regular to be natural, drifted in from the edge of known space. Then a coded burst, old Council protocol used only by High Command. It was not a message for humans. It was a command to scout fleets. Search Sector Theta 9. Verify anomaly. Daniel Cruz called an emergency council meeting aboard New Sol Command. The chamber was quiet as leaders from every world gathered. Farmers from Meridia, miners from Kael, pilots from Forge Station. Lisa Morin stood near the main display, arms crossed, her face grim. Elena Rojas, now head of Deep Range Operations, reported what they knew. They're scanning the rift's perimeter. Slow, careful. They don't want to enter blind. They're afraid, Marcus Bell's son Jared said. He had taken his father's role as a voice for the people. They remember the stories. They think we're hiding weapons. We are hiding peace, Daniel replied. But peace needs protection. The Alliance had never built weapons of mass destruction. They had no planet killers, no plasma cannons, no war fleets. But they had something better, defense. Their symbiont ships could cloak in magnetic storms. Their orbital platforms could deflect energy beams with layered shields made of charged particles and light-bending fields. And every citizen knew how to seal a dome, reroute power, or pilot an escape shuttle. Still, they prepared, not for war but for survival. On Aurora, public spaces were fitted with emergency shelters. On Meridia, floating cities practiced silent lockdown drills. At Forge Station, engineers began modifying old freighters into mobile hospitals and supply carriers just in case. Then, the signal came, not a whisper but a roar. A full council armada had entered the outer rim of the Helios Rift. Over 200 ships, Varelian dreadnoughts, Mirran corvettes, even ancient Zenthar carriers, formed a wall of metal and light. They did not fire. They did not speak. They simply waited. The Alliance did not panic. Instead, they opened a channel. Not with threats, but with an invitation. This is the Sovereign Stellar Alliance, Elena said, her voice calm over the comms. You are entering sovereign space. State your purpose. For hours, there was silence. Then a reply. It was Zirin. He had returned, not as a prisoner, but as an envoy. The Council demands to see for itself, he said. They do not believe what we told them. They think it is trickery. Then bring them, Daniel said. But come in peace. One ship, unarmed. We will meet you at the neutral zone, planet orbit Delta. The meeting place was a barren moon with no value, no resources, just rock and silence. The Alliance sent only one vessel, the Ares Legacy, now retrofitted with observation decks and translation systems. Inside waited Daniel, Lisa, Elena, and Jared. They wore no uniforms, only simple clothes. They carried no weapons. The Council ship arrived slowly, its hull scarred from past battles. Zirin stepped out first, followed by 3 others. A Varelian elder, a Myran diplomat, and a Zenthar observer whose many eyes blinked in unison. They looked around, clearly expecting hidden guns or traps. Instead, they saw open hands. Daniel greeted them. You are welcome here, the tour began. They visited Aurora, walking through open-air farms where children laughed and robots tended to crops. They saw schools where students debated ethics alongside physics. They visited a hospital where human and alien medical knowledge were combined to heal a wounded Cathar prisoner, captured not in battle, but rescued from a wrecked raider ship. The Varelian elder, named Torvak, said little, but his eyes widened when he saw a 0-point reactor powering an entire city with no waste, no heat, no danger. This technology, it should not be possible, he muttered. It is, Lisa said. Because we stopped fighting each other long enough to build it. On the final day, they gathered in a garden on New Sol command. Stars glittered above the dome. Daniel spoke plainly. You exiled us because you feared what we might become. But look at us now. We did not build an empire of conquest. We built one of care. We feed the hungry. We heal the sick. We teach the young to question, not obey. Torvak was silent for a long time. Then he said, the council is afraid. Not of you, of change. Your existence proves that our way is not the only way. It never was, Daniel replied. As the council envoys prepared to leave, Zyron turned to Elena. What do you want from us, he asked. Nothing, she said. But if you ever need help again, we'll be here. When the council ship departed, the Alliance held its breath. Would they return with weapons? Would they spread lies? Or would they finally see? Days turned into weeks. Then a new message arrived, not from the council as a whole, but from a coalition of younger species. The Mirren, the Zenthar, and others tired of Varelian control. They asked for knowledge, for seeds, for medical aid. They offered trade, not treaties. The Varelians remained silent, but they did not send warships. In the quiet that followed, humanity did not celebrate. They worked harder. They shared more. They knew the real test was not surviving exile, but proving that kindness could be as strong as force. And in the heart of the Helios Rift, a new kind of power grew, not loud, not sharp, but steady, like a seed pushing through stone, like light returning after a long night. Exiled by the Galactic Council, humanity built an empire of its own. Part 5. The message came on a calm morning in Aurora's spring cycle. The sky was pale blue, the wind soft, and children played near fields of golden grain. On New Sol command, the comms officer handed Daniel Cruz a data chip with no encryption. Just a simple signal, sent openly across the rift. It was from the Galactic Council. Not a threat, not a demand, an invitation. After months of silence, the council had fractured. The younger species, Myron, Zenthar, even some of the smaller Varelian houses, had pushed for dialogue. The old guard, led by High Arbiter Kelra, resisted, but the evidence was undeniable. The Alliance had not attacked. They had healed. They had shared. And when Cathar raiders struck a Myron colony weeks earlier, it was human symbiont ships that arrived first, driving the raiders back with non-lethal pulse fields that disabled engines but spared lives. Now, the council asked to meet again, this time, not on a barren moon, but at the edge of Alliance space. They wanted to talk about a new compact. Daniel agreed, but only if the meeting happened aboard a neutral vessel, built by humans, staffed by both sides, and powered by a zero-point core so no one could claim sabotage. The ship was named the Common Star. It was small, bright and shaped like a ring with gardens inside and observation decks that looked out on the stars. When the day came, Daniel, Lisa, Elena, and Jared boarded it with calm hearts. They wore no badges, no ranks, just the clothes of people who had worked the land and flown the void. The council delegation arrived in 3 ships. Kelra herself stepped onto the Common Star, her obsidian skin gleaming under soft lights. She moved slowly, her age showing in the slight bend of her spine. Beside her walked Zyron, now promoted to envoy, and representatives from 7 other species. They looked around, not with suspicion this time, but with something close to wonder. The talks lasted 17 days. They were not easy. The Varelians demanded oversight. The Alliance refused. The Myron asked for farming tech. The humans offered it freely. The Zenthar wanted access to human medical archives. The Alliance agreed as long as knowledge flowed both ways. Arguments flared. Tempers rose. But no one walked out, because for the first time, both sides saw the other not as enemy or outcast, but as people. On the final day, Kaelra stood before the group. Her voice, once sharp as stone, was softer now. We exiled you because we feared your fire, she said. But fire can destroy, or it can warm. You chose to warm. Daniel nodded. We only ever wanted to belong. Not to rule, not to conquer. Just to be part of the galaxy, on our own terms. The agreement they signed had no grand name. They called it the Pact of Mutual Respect. It said the Alliance would remain sovereign. No council laws, no enforcers, no observers. In return, humanity would share certain technologies, clean energy, medical advances, and methods to restore damaged worlds. They would also join a joint defense network against true threats like the Cathar, not with warships, but with early warning systems and rescue fleets. There would be no formal alliance, no flags raised together, just cooperation, built slowly like a bridge across a deep river. When the council ships left, the people of the Helios Rift did not cheer. They gathered in quiet places, in gardens, on ocean platforms, in the glow of Forge Station, and simply breathed. The fear was gone, not because they had won, but because they had been seen. Months later, the first joint project began. Near the border of Alliance and Council space, a research station rose from the void. It was built from human biosteel and Varelian crystal lattices. Inside, human botanists worked with Mirran soil singers to grow plants that could heal poisoned earth. Xanthar engineers and human programmers designed a new kind of communication net that carried thoughts as well as words. Even Kelra visited once, walking slowly through the greenhouses, touching a leaf with her long fingers. Marcus Bell's grandson, now a teacher on Meridia, took his students on a field trip to the station. One child asked, "Are we still exiles?" "No," he said. "We're neighbors." Daniel stood on the observation deck of New Sol Command one evening, watching the twin suns of Aurora set behind the clouds. Lisa joined him, her hands in her pockets, her eyes tired but content. "We did it," she said. "We're still doing it," he replied. They had not built an empire of thrones or armies. They had built one of classrooms and clinics, of shared meals and open doors. They had proven that being cast out did not mean being lost. Sometimes it meant finding a better way, far away, on a quiet hill outside Olympus town on Mars, still under council watch but now receiving data packets from the Rift. A group of Earth scientists watched the news of the pact. One of them, an old woman who had been a child during the Exodus, whispered, "They made it." And for the first time in a century, Earth felt hope. In the Helios Rift, the stars shone brighter than ever, not because they had changed, but because humanity had learned to see them clearly, not as distant points of light, but as homes waiting to be known. And somewhere out there, among the swirling gas and silent planets, a new story was just beginning.